We had 5 major tax bills in about 15 months, unprecedented. And what we want to know from a tax perspective is, what do you do with the expenses that you're getting forgiven? They took an act of Congress, but the good news is that you can still deduct the expenses. So I think many small businesses need to be working with their CPAs or other tax advisors to prepare the documents, submit the documents, and get this all in the past.
The following is brought to you by Thryv, the end-to-end client experience platform that helps you get the job, manage the job, and get credit.
Hey, this is Gordon Henry at Winning on Main Street, and this week you get to meet Barbara Weltman, who runs Big Ideas for Smallbusiness.com. She's been working since 1977 as an attorney and small business advocate and was called the guru of small business taxes by the Wall Street Journal. She's been named a top 100 small business influencer. She's written, get this, over 25 books, including perennial top sellers like J.K. Lasser's Small Business Taxes and J.K. Lasser's 1,001 Deductions and Tax Breaks. So you can find Barbara at bigideasforsmallbusiness.com. Welcome, Barbara.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. So Barbara, you know kind of everything there is to know about small business taxes, and we have a lot of small business people who listen and who are obviously interested in cutting their taxes. So what must a small business operator know about taxes that they probably don't know?
Well, these are very, very challenging times because we had 5 major tax bills in about 15 months, unprecedented. Of course, COVID-19 was unprecedented, and a lot of the new measures were in response to the need to incentivize small businesses to help their employees and to help them stay in business. So what you want to know, and many small businesses have already filed their 2020 returns, and so they're thinking about this year and what to do this year. And there are many opportunities, and a lot of what's going on dovetails with government programs to help small businesses. Like we all know about the PPP loans, and there are now grants for restaurants, grants for theaters and other kinds of venues like that. And what we want to know from a tax perspective is, what do you do with the expenses that you're getting forgiven in a sense, for this free money, if you will. Yeah. And the good news is it took an act of Congress, but the good news is that you can still deduct the expenses. So your payroll, your rent, your utilities, all of those expenses that are going to be covered by these government assistance programs are still going to be deductible. So in a way, you're getting a double break. You're getting the money and as well as the tax write-offs. But I think the thing to be thinking about is, we're in the phase now where many small businesses are working to apply for loan forgiveness. If they don't do that, they're going to have to be repaying the borrowing. And so I think many small businesses need to be working with their CPAs or other tax advisors to prepare the documents, submit the documents, and get this all in the past, get it done with. And that's really the focus right now. And then I guess I could talk about payroll, what's going on with payroll too, because there are numerous things going on with payroll. So for example, businesses that have 20 or more employers who have group health plans and are subject to COBRA, which I think we've offered health continuation coverage, are mandated to pay the premiums from April 1 through September 30th of this year. Now, when I say pay the premiums, they have to cover the premiums, but they get a tax credit for it against their employment taxes. So it's really not coming out of your pocket, but it is an administrative chore that you have to see that you do so that you aren't out of pocket. And there are notice requirements and such. And if you don't follow all the government rules, you can be subject to penalties, which nobody wants to incur penalties. That's just a waste of money, and who wants to do that? So that's one thing. Then employers who want to offer continued sick pay and family leave because of COVID, they can do that. It's voluntary this year. Last year it was mandatory. Again, it's through September 30th, and there are employment tax credits that you can take to offset it. And finally, there's the employee retention credit, which runs through the end of the year, has been greatly enhanced compared to what the credit was last year. And again, this is another employment tax credit, has no impact on income taxes. This is on your payroll taxes. So again, a lot of breaks out there, a lot of opportunities for seeing that you can continue to support your employees, and that, you know, employees these days, that's the number one issue for small businesses these days, is finding and retaining employees. So whatever you can do to help, it's a plus.
Yeah, that's great advice, and I want to get into that employee issue. I just wanted to ask you, more generally speaking, when it comes to taxes, are there certain things that most small businesses do wrong? Is there a common pitfall that maybe people should just look out for generally?
The most common mistake that I see happening is just bad record keeping. Just small business owners just are lax. Sometimes they do things like mix up their personal and their business finances. They may not have a separate bank account or separate credit card, so they're not kind of allotting the right expenses to the business portion. Obviously, personal expenses are not going to be a business deduction. So, and there are case after case after case. Plus, for certain types of business expenses, like travel expenses, business use of a personal vehicle, you need special substantiation. And if you don't do it, you're going to miss out on legitimate write-offs.
Right. So record keeping is just a big thing, and everybody's
big thing. Boring, but big.
Right. Right. Do you recommend QuickBooks, or what?
Sure. There are many options. QuickBooks is sort of the biggest, but there's so many other options, and really any of them that you can use is going to be helpful to you. The thing about record keeping is that I think many people who go into business feel, well, they're not a numbers kind of person and they don't know anything about accounting. But the good news is with these applications, including many of them are mobile, you don't have to know anything. All you have to do is just input your expense, input your income, and the programs do the rest. So it's not to be intimidated, just do it.
Right, just stay on top of it. Before we go too long, I do want to ask the question, do you have individual clients who come to you for like one-on-one help as a client, or that's not something you offer as a service?
That's not something I do anymore.
Okay, you used to.
I spent many 25 plus years doing that in my law practice with clients, but once I closed my law practice and started my business, I just give general advice to small business owners.
Yeah. Okay, great. You wrote a book, a J.K. Lasser book called that was the Guide to Self-Employment. What's unique about self-employment and tax strategies that people should know as opposed to more general small business tax strategies?
Well, the good thing about if you're self-employed, and really the book is aimed to so-called Schedule C filers. So people who, along with their basic 1040 income tax return, file a special schedule to report their business income and expenses. And some of the challenges for these businesses, well, we already discussed separating your personal and business finances, but also estimated taxes and self-employment tax. Those are two things that people who haven't been in business and then start businesses, and right now we're in a business boom. Business applications are impressive, to say the least, as we were coming out of COVID. So many people start as self-employed people, even if they eventually perhaps become a limited liability company or incorporate. And the thing about, they have to recognize that they're going to pay the employer and employee share of what they know as FICA on their profits, essentially, on their net earnings from self-employment. And so that's an extra tax that they have to think about paying, although 1/2 is deductible. And then also they have to think about, they don't have withholding as they did with a job. They're responsible for pay as you go, and pay as you go for self-employed people usually is through quarterly estimated taxes. So 4 times a year, you got to pay estimated taxes, which is going to cover your income tax, your self-employment tax, and certain other taxes that you may owe, like additional Medicare taxes and alternative minimum tax and certain other taxes. So the challenge that I hear frequently from self-employed people is they don't have the cash to pay the estimated taxes, because money comes in the door. They're going to be spending it on business expenses. They need to take money out for their personal living. And where's the money come estimated tax time? So one of the things I always suggest is that self-employed people set up a separate bank account and funnel some money in on a regular basis. So if you, for example, let's say you're a service business and you make $1,000. Well, the $1,000 isn't all yours to spend in reality, because some of it has to cover expenses and some taxes. So maybe put 10%, 20% into the separate account to accrue that money over time, and then have the money on hand to pay estimated taxes.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm familiar with that problem. So you've given small businesses in some of your books a lot of advice about cutting expenses. I think that was part of the title of one of your books. And it gets to this issue of running the business successfully, having enough money, as you just said, to pay taxes and hopefully have a profit at the end of the year. What are some of the best strategies for cutting expenses? And again, what are some of the things small businesses often do wrong or should do better when it comes to managing and cutting expenses?
I think that that no expense is off limits, and that you really need to look at every expense. And I think one of the problems for many business owners is that annual expenses that come up, like subscriptions, insurance, you just automatically renew, and you don't even think about, well, do I need it? Am I getting the right, do I need more insurance, less insurance? Is there ways to reduce the insurance by increasing a deductible? That kind of thing. So no automatic renewals. Really look at everything that's on your plate. Another way to cut expenses, and I think many small businesses learned this during COVID, is that you may not need the office space that you had. And I've been home-based since 1983. And when I built a professional office on my home and worked from home all those years, but it makes a very big difference when you don't have to pay a landlord every month. And that's, so I think looking at what, if you have a lease now, what can you do with it? Can you sublet some space? Can you get out of your lease? Can you negotiate with your landlord to reduce the rent if they're, they may be amenable to it now, given the what's happening with a commercial space these days. So that's one thing. Another thing I think is always thinking about buying versus leasing, especially when it comes to equipment and vehicles. And leasing, it's a financing arrangement, and you have to recognize that, but it may cost you less. There may be less cash flow involved, and that may be a big help to you. Cutting expenses, I think, is one way to improve your bottom line and probably cut your cash flow issues. But I think in today's environment, another thing that business owners have to be thinking about is raising prices, because everybody else is. you're paying more for everything. You're paying more to fill up your tank. You're paying more for supplies. The cost of employees for their benefits and to retain them and attract good workers is going up. I think you have to think about your pricing these days. And I know from my experience, many small business owners are so reluctant to raise prices. You think you raise prices and you're going to lose customers. And it's true. Maybe some customers are just looking for the cost. But if you are offering value with your pricing, then you're not going to lose customers, and customers understand that prices go up.
Yeah, excellent points. It is a very unique environment right now, for sure. I want to come back to that issue of employees that you addressed a few minutes ago, because it sort of ties in. We seem to be in this new environment, at least for now, where there's a lot of demand. There's not enough supply in many cases. There are shortages, as you said, of all sorts of supplies. And I don't know about you, but I know many people who've been doing something around the house. They're either painting or re-roofing, or they're redoing a kitchen, or they're paving a driveway, or they're putting in a pool. Lots of home type renovations that people started working on during COVID that they're maybe finishing up right now. And what I hear is that they can't get the service. They can't. I heard one guy sent me actually a picture of a sign that a pool installer had put in his window, and says basically, "Sorry, we're not accepting any more new customers. I can't get the help. If you know anybody who wants to come work for me, please give me a call." They can't find the workers, and so they can't provide the service. What's a small business to do?
It's a challenge for sure. And I know, just if you just drive around town, almost every establishment has a help wanted sign now in the window. It's just amazing. I can't remember a time like this ever. With that said, I think that with the demise of a lot of the unemployment benefits, certainly many states have ended them, and the federal support is ending on Labor Day. I think more people will come back into the job pool. One of the things that can be very attractive to employees, two things I think are very attractive, perhaps to lure new workers. One is flexibility. They have gotten used to remote work, flexible hours, whatever that. So if you can offer that, that's great. And the other is training. So if you are in the position to train your workers, perhaps somebody who is eager and shows an interest, then perhaps you can train to fit your company culture, and that will be appreciated. With the knowledge, I think it has to be said that once you train somebody, they may go elsewhere, but hopefully they will remain loyal.
Yeah, hopefully they see a career path and stick around.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. This is great, Barbara, and we're going to be back in just 1 minute with more from Barbara Weltman.
This episode of Winning on Main Street is brought to you by Thryv, the end-to-end client experience platform that includes everything small business owners need to meet their customers' expectations. Thryv's award-winning and fully mobile interface delivers technology previously reserved for big business to the fingertips of small business owners nationwide. Thryv's built specifically for small business, but there's nothing small about what it can do. Thryv handles your entire customer experience, helping business owners reach more customers, stay organized, get paid faster, and generate online reviews, all from a single device or screen. To learn more about Thryv, visit winningonmainstreet.com and click on Get a Demo. When it comes to software to run your business, there's no comparison. Check out Thryv today.
And we're back with Barbara Weltman, an expert on finance and legal and taxes for small business people, and really fascinating conversation because so much is changing right now in the small business space. So we were just chatting during the break about Uber and Lyft drivers. Barbara wrote a book about Uber and Lyft drivers and how they should strategize. And a question I guess currently is being debated is, are they employees or are they 1099 workers, and how should they be treated? So let's tackle that one. What's going to happen to these folks?
Well, that's an unknown. It's a very big question. We're familiar, I'm sure, with the California position that they are employees and they have an ABC test. And basically, under this test, if a worker is doing the work that the company is known for, then they're going to be an employee. So if Uber, for example, hires a plumber to fix a leak in the office, they're not going to be an employee. They're going to be an independent contractor. But if they're hiring a driver, then in Uber's, according to California and many other locations, they're going to be employees. I think that the states have an interest in, they think they're protecting these workers and ensuring that they're collecting taxes and such. Many workers would prefer to be independent contractors to write off their expenses and have more control over what they're doing. It's an ongoing question, and it really depends in part on location and also in part on what they're doing, because some drivers may be driving for multiple platforms and doing other things, and so they have a good argument that maybe that they're in a business, they have their own business, and therefore they're not an employee. But again, there's no easy answer. And just to complicate things even further, the IRS has a completely different test. So it's even possible that you could be an employee for state purposes and an independent contractor for IRS purposes. So it's a mess.
That's very complicated. So if there's any Uber or Lyft drivers who are listening to this podcast, what should they do? Just ask their tax attorney,
They
consult
should
their
ask
attorney.
their tax advisor, see what's going on in their location. I mean, and monitor what's going on, because things can change.
Yeah. Most of the Uber Lyft drivers that I've met or chatted with during rides seem to like being independents, mostly because they like the flexibility of the hours. I suppose that could be worked into that law, but how do you call someone an employee who just works when they want, day, night, days they do work, don't work, it's all up to them? That's still an employee. Hard to imagine.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the legal argument in favor of independent contractor. But again, it's what the courts and the legislature decide.
Minimum wage is a big topic right now. I'm sure you're being asked about it all the time, and people are arguing what should the minimum wage be. What do you recommend to small businesses about what they should pay? You were talking before, they may have to increase what they're paying now to get employees or get good employees. And also, what should they be paying themselves?
Well, that's a great question, because the reality is a lot of the big box stores have agreed they're going to do the $15 an hour. And so if you're a small business and you're in the same town and you're next door to Home Depot or Walmart, you're going to have to do that, because otherwise there's zero chance that somebody's going to work for you, versus they're just going to look at the numbers. It doesn't make sense. Plus, these big companies are offering a slew of benefits. So you do have to be realistic about it. The challenge is not really the minimum wage, but what do you do with all the people that are above the minimum wage? They have to be increased as well. If you're increasing your bottom paid workers, you're going to have to increase the workers that are earning more. So your whole pay scale is going to change. And along with that, you have to recognize that when you increase your pay scale, your employment tax costs go up, because it's based on your payroll, and the benefit costs go up. So what you're contributing, let's say, to a retirement plan for an employee. So you have to look at the big picture. It's not just raising the minimum wage. It's much more complex than that. In terms of what you're paying yourself, I think first of all, you have to understand, if you are an S corporation, a C corporation, you take a salary like any other employee. If you are unincorporated, you're a sole proprietor, you're a partner, you're a member in a limited liability company, you don't get a salary. What you can take a draw, you can withdraw money every month to cover your personal expenses, but whatever you take out, it's not a deduction. It's just money that you're taking out. You're still paying tax on your share of the profits. So what you take out depends on what the business can afford to allow you to do and what you need. So it's something that you have to continually look at. So maybe what you're doing at the beginning of the year is not going to match what you do at the end of the year. And how frequently you do it, again, depends on your personal situation.
Excellent points. We just have a few minutes left. You've been very generous with your time here. And I want to ask you, I guess, my least favorite question, which is, as soon as you get on the topic of small businesses, you hear the famous statistics, 20% fail in the first year, 50% fail by 5 years. I think 80% fail over 7 or 10 years. The failure rates are very high. And yet, here we are out of the pandemic and we're seeing record numbers of new business registrations. Everybody, hope springs eternal. So, is there anything you would say to a budding entrepreneur who's starting their own small business and saying, this is what you must do so that you don't become a statistic, that you succeed where others have not succeeded? What are the keys, one or two key things you think small business people must keep in mind to achieve success and not become one of the failures?
Well, first of all, just with respect to the concept of failure, failure isn't a horrible thing. Failure may be a lesson to you. And many people who fail in business start another one and another one and another one. Sure. So you can go to some of the most successful entrepreneurs and they've had multiple failures. So that's not the worst thing. But I think one of the things to probably avoid is putting at risk too much of your own money. Like, in other words, taking out money from a 401k plan to start a business. You're going to kill your retirement savings, and then if the business goes under, you're really sunk. Or a lot of small business owners now, with the value of homes going up so much, tapping into home equity as startup funds. It's easy to do, and the cost is really inexpensive because the interest rates are so low. But if the business fails, you're still having to pay that mortgage or risk losing your home. So I would be very cautious on that end. Another issue that can trip up a lot of business startups is going in with partners, because I've seen over and over again mismatches that it all seems great. Think of it like a marriage. You always go in with the best of all possible worlds. You're going to last forever and you're always in love, but something happens and you disagree about the direction, you disagree about the money, you disagree about how much one partner's working a lot and the other partner's hardly working at all. So just be cautious about who you choose to go into partnership with, and be sure to have a really good partnership agreement to extricate yourself from a bad situation. Just like a prenup, you want a good partnership agreement.
Yeah, excellent advice. Sage advice. I can see you've done this before.
Yeah.
Well, last question before we leave, and it's more on the personal side, but you've written over 25 books. You maintain all sorts of blogs and websites, and you're a huge contributor to so many things. How do you do it? What's your secret for productivity and managing your time so that you're able to do so much?
Well, first of all, I love what I do. Otherwise, I don't have to be doing it anymore. And I just find every day is something new. I learn something new. I enjoy the continued learning experience. I start my day walking 5 miles and exercising and getting ready, and then I have my sources that I check every day to what's new and that. And so for me, deadlines help a lot because gotta submit things when they're due, and so that's very helpful. But also, I have a very good network of people in the small business sector. I have a very good, I have a virtual assistant who helps me. I have a bookkeeper. I have an IT person. So I have a good team of outside help to help to see that things go smoothly, and it just seems to work. I love it.
That's great. Great. Well, Barbara, thank you so much for your time. This has been a great session, and I've learned a lot, and I think our listeners have too. And for those of you who are listening, again, Barbara Weltman, author of many books and best known for bigideasforsmallbusiness.com. That's her website where you can find her blogs, all the information about her books, etc. So thanks again, Barbara.
A pleasure.
And for those of you who are listening, if you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and tell a friend or colleague to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate it. Until next time, make it a great week.